Thank you so much for joining us today. This is Sarah Lewis, and I started this venture, All Moms Need Help, as a way to share information with moms and parents about important subjects and hot topics while we are all at home together during this coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic. I have a very special guest today, Diane Bogart, and she is an ADHD coach, and she has her own business called the ADHD Focus Group. And Diane first considered coaching as a career when her life was radically improved by another ADHD coach. And coaching took her from worrying about work every single day, including on the weekends, to recognizing that the reason why that her work seemed so hard as an IT project manager is because her innate personality strengths were not being valued. And she had the life-changing shift from perpetual fear at work, realizing that her success at work was amazing, specifically because she wasn't using her natural strengths. Diane strives to help her clients find the perspective they need to be successful and happy. She works with adults and children and families. Diane studied healthcare at Emory University and the University of Pittsburgh, and she studied ADHD coaching at the internationally recognized Attention Deficit Disorder Coaches Academy. The acronym is ADDCA. So we're going to introduce you to Diane. Thank you for joining us today. So Diane, you were not diagnosed with ADHD until you were in your 20s. How did that impact your life?
Well, the story is very funny. I was in a psychology class, and there was a book called Driven to Distraction, which was really one of the first mainstream ADHD stories out there. And I read the book and I thought, wow, this is my mom. And I mailed her the book. And then a week later, she called and said, wow, that's you. And I said, no, it's you. And she said, okay, ask your friends. And I asked my friends and they were like, yeah, it's kind of you. And I was like, who knew? It was very shocking to me. But once I knew that, I was really able to see so many things in my life that it really affected. And that was, through college, I struggled desperately to sit still through all the classes. And then they'd start having a 3-hour class on a Monday afternoon. And it was just, so, I really struggled with those things through the years, but knowing there was a reason helps so much, because I can say, oh, this is not me. This is my ADD. It's not that I can't do it. It's that my ADD keeps me from doing it.
So you had a name to it, and that helped give you some guidance. And, we say ADHD, but that's an acronym. What does that stand for, and what is that exactly?
So it stands for Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. Some people say ADHD, some people leave the H out because you're not hyperactive, which I'm hardly hyperactive anymore, but I also can't sit still. So I think I'm still ADHD. There are some professionals who have actually started using another term, which is, can't remember this. It's very new. Variable attention stimulus trait. And so rather than saying like it's a disorder, because, I don't want to be a disorder, I have a trait. And that trait is that my attention is extremely variable. And, some days I can sit through the 3-hour class and it is fascinating. And then other days it is just not going in at all. So there's a lot of variability in how we pay attention and when we can pay attention.
It's very interesting, and probably there's levels too, where you are on maybe a spectrum, but we don't have to get into that today, but that did make me think that there's probably a spectrum there too of severeness. How would a child go about getting diagnosed for ADHD?
Okay, so, usually it's something where the parent or a pediatrician, a teacher, one of those things, one of those people would say, hey, now, if it's grandma saying that your 3-year-old is super duper hyper and she's never seen a kid run like that, they're 3. And 3-year-olds run, that's what they do. And they're adorable and they're 3. And even when they're not adorable, they're still 3, so they're hyper. So I wouldn't get freaked out at that point. It's much further on where you can start to distinguish those traits. So it can be a psychologist. You can see a psychiatrist. One of the things that I would certainly encourage you to do is see somebody who specializes in it. And if you're not able to find somebody who specializes in ADHD, because that's a pretty specific thing, somebody who works with learning disabilities, because there is a really significant overlap between many learning disabilities like dyslexia, dyscalculia, some of the others that all the somethings, there's a tremendous overlap with ADHD. So somebody that has that background in learning disabilities is going to be able to help you on both fronts.
That's a great point. And I've heard from parents that, it's not just that they have ADHD. They have a speech language pathologist, or they have, other issues that they're having to work on together to make it work for the child. So does age of child factor in the symptoms that a parent might pick up on, and how do those symptoms change by age?
It is definitely very age specific. Like I said, 3-year-old, they're hyper. It's okay. Part of the way you can understand ADHD and recognize the symptoms is that for people with ADHD, well, for everybody, you have your frontal lobe of your brain, and that controls what's called executive function. So that is emotional control, behavioral control, impulse control, short-term, like working memory, like give me a list of 5 things and I'm going to go in the other room and go, why am I in here? That's why. That's short. That would be working memory. So some of those things are controlled by your frontal lobe. And what happens with ADHD kids is, and it goes into adulthood, is we're about 30% behind in terms of growth and development of that frontal lobe behind everybody else that is our physical age number. So when you think of, giving your 6-year-old a list of 5 things to go to your room and bring back the crayons, the coloring book, the marker, and your mat. Don't forget your mat, because I don't let you color without your mat. They're going to come back with 2 of them, right? And you're like, you're 6, you should remember this. Well, not really, because intellectually, at that control and that remembering part, their brain is literally the same size as that of a 4-year-old. So it isn't necessarily something that they have the ability to do. When you're talking about a 14-year-old, you're looking at 11 or 12. So they're still forgetting all their science projects till the night before, and you have to make the science project. And the permission slips and the books and having the right thing. And, oh gosh, today's spirit day, so can you bring me? So have some patience with them, because literally their brain is behind what you would expect. So if you have another child, if you've got them in class with other kids in sports, looking at the other kids and you think, they're just not as mature, that may be part of what's going on.
That's a great point. It's just when you can understand what they're going through, you have patience, or it's easier for you to have patience with them and try to assist them and not overburden them with, burden's maybe not the right word, but ask them to do things that they're just not capable of, because it would frustrate the child too, because they find out that
it does, because kids don't come into the world like wake up and be like, I'm going to torture mom today. Most kids don't do that. They're trying to be good. They want mom and dad to love them.
No, that's so true. That's a good point. Well, that leads me to the next question, and that can you tell us what your focus is on addressing ADHD?
So I can work with, kids, adults. I work with men and women. But I love working with parents of ADDers. And it doesn't matter whether their child's 5 or 15 or 25. Like, there are certain things that my mom's always going to be my mom, and it doesn't matter what I say, or if I have a house, it doesn't matter. She's my mom. And so, when you have that diagnosis come in, there are so many things as a parent that you want to know and you worry about, and you think, oh gosh, am I going to be able to take care of him? What does this mean for the family? What does this mean? Is he going to need a different class? And there's 1,000 things you can worry about, right? So the parents are going through stuff. And then at the same time, and if you're married, you're going through one thing and your husband's going through something else, and they may not be related. Sometimes they're not. So, knowing that, and the kid is going through things, and you have the things that you need to do to help prop that kid up. So I love doing, especially group sessions, group coaching with parents, spend 5 or 10 minutes talking about a topic and say, here's some education around this. Food dye. That's a big hot topic. Is food dye safe? Talk about the topic for a few minutes, and then from there, talk about your experiences. Like, what have these parents gone through? And so for me as an ADD person, it's so funny because I will hear what a parent said, and I'm, oh yeah, so here's the thing, they really only heard the first sentence of that. Everything after that didn't happen. And they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, so you started out saying I didn't something, and then everything from there stopped happening, because in my head I'm thinking, oh my God, I didn't do that. Does that mean I did something else? And this whole ADD spiral has happened, and the parent has no idea. And they're like, why aren't you listening? Well, because ADD has stolen their brain away on this trail of worry. So, it's something that really is very helpful, I think. And I think even just knowing they're not alone, like they kind of want to shake their kids sometimes. Well, don't shake your kids, but it's okay, because there are other people that want to shake their kids. It's okay, just don't do
it. That's a great point. So it's always good for parents to have that outlet. It really is, to have someone else to talk to. So I guess, while we are all at home during this pandemic, do you have suggestions for moms or parents on assisting or supporting a child that does have ADHD?
Sure. There are a couple different things. One thing to know is the absolute enemy of the ADHD mind is boredom or monotony. Those are they're 4-letter words. And at the same time that I don't want anything boring, I want everything to be new, I want it all exciting, my brain's like, yes, let's do something fun. There's part of me that if we change the routine too much, I'm going to get overwhelmed, right? And I'm going to throw down, especially if I'm 5 or 6 and suddenly the routine changes too much. Whoa, right? That first week of school is always rough. The first week of Christmas break is rough. The first week back to school is rough. So changing those routines is really hard. So the best way to manage it is to do what are called micro changes. So little changes, right? So if you've got one, 7 or 8-year-old who's suddenly dinner time has turned into just World War III every day, and who knows why? Who knows? Because it just does, right? So take that time, have the same thing you were going to cook, have dinner at the same time you were going to do it, but maybe you have it as a picnic. And that's like new and fun and exciting, right? Or here's another one that is used with caution. Is Simon Says, take 2 bites of carrots, right? And it turns it into a fun thing. And then you have a whole mouthful of carrots. And so you can do different things like that can make it interesting, not the same stuff, but not breaking the routine.
That's a great point. Even my 3-year-old, I might introduce him to Simon tonight. Can all use that creativity. Especially when you have little ones, you're always looking for something to activate them. So, and currently, kind of following up on that too, currently more and more states across the nation are closing schools for the fiscal year, the calendar year. How can actually being homeschooled or having virtual learning in the comfort of their own home, how can that actually be a benefit for someone that has ADHD?
So it really can. The thing, you have to balance it, right? Because I know a lot of parents are like, oh, my kid can't do this teleclass thing. I've seen it all over Facebook, tons of parents. The first thing I would check is, where is your child teleclassing? Because if it's at the kitchen table so you can keep an eye on them, that's great. but that's the most interesting place in the house, because that's where everybody walks through and the dog hangs out waiting for scraps, and you can smell the lunch cooking, and man, I'm hungry, and what are we having for lunch, and all these things that are so much more interesting. So first, control that space. And it may be earphones, it may be, don't put them in the timeout space facing the wall. That's a little much, but find that balance where they're able to tune other things out. But then the thing that's awesome, it's the first and probably only time that they won't have to sit still. They're going to be able to learn and move at the same time. And I know that sounds crazy, but studies have shown that with hyperactivity, there are some people that learn through motion. So they literally, if they memorize something while they're walking or while they're jogging in place or doing jumping jacks or whatever it is, or swinging their legs and banging them on the chair, that motion can help them actually learn better. So when you allow them that, and that gives them an ability to learn that they wouldn't have in school. So it's actually a pretty good opportunity.
That's a great point. And maybe if there's too much stimulus, then maybe even try different locations a couple times and try to figure out that perfect location for the child.
And then change it every once in a while too, because it's got to be new.
And then change it. That's a great point. Okay, so I'm going to bring in the question on, there are many schools of thought on how to appropriately address ADHD, starting with medication, of course. Wouldn't be appropriate to have the conversation without discussing medication. Where do you think medications such as Adderall or Ritalin, come in, and how does that, how does your approach differ, I guess, or how does it maybe connect with medication to help make the big picture work?
Sure. So a coach is not going to be able to prescribe medicine. The closest I'm going to come to a recommendation on somebody's meds is I think you need to see the psychiatrist or your primary care and get this adjusted. But medication can help. It can help a child focus, right? It's going to help them be able to focus. But you've got to remember this little 30% up here, and that 30% is not going to magically grow when you take a pill. Right? So I'm not suddenly going to be as good at impulse control, but I can learn, I can pay attention long enough to have the skills to learn, oh, this is what it feels like when I'm about to reach out and do something stupid, right? This is what it feels like when I'm about to mess up. Oh, and this is, social skills. They're 30% behind. So what 8th graders are thinking about and what 5th graders are thinking about, very different. How they interact is very different. So it's typical for parents to look for social skills training for their kids. And if they're on meds, it gives them a leg up on being able to pay attention and be able to learn it. It doesn't happen automatically. And you were talking earlier about the idea of a spectrum. There absolutely is. And that may vary throughout their life. It varies throughout the day sometimes. How much sleep have they had? How much, are they on a regular routine? Has there been too much stimulus? There are a lot of factors. So it may be that a kid doesn't need to be on medication. But if you are continually trying to teach them and still they're struggling, life's hard. I don't make it harder. If there's a way to make your kid's life better, I always go for it. But that's just me. But on the other hand, do I want to be like, oh, just take a pill, you'll be fine? No, right? You've absolutely got to be sure that's what you want to do. And you've got to be able to have the patience to work through the process, because it's not a pill and you're fine. Parents worry their kids are going to turn into zombies, right? Like that's the typical, oh, I don't want him to lose all his personality. If they feel like zombies and act that differently, your medication dose isn't right, or your medication isn't right. And you need to go back to that doctor and talk to them about it, because there is no reason that they should seem like a whole different person in a way that worries you. Your children. And if it's worrisome, then you need to take them back and say, this is not right. This is not the one.
Right. So it all works together. You try out the medication to help with the focus. and
Yep.
then work with a counselor to work on the life skills, the big picture. And
Mm-hmm.
then, as you go through the process,
Mm-hmm.
you'll figure out the perfect place to be, like where we need to be. And I imagine medication, that amount of it can change. It can
Yeah,
increase.
because they grow.
Yeah.
Kids with the growing, it's got to change all the time.
So that's great. That's super helpful. So one more thing, well, a couple more things. One, do you have any suggestions for parents that are at home? They found themselves accidental homeschoolers overnight,
Yeah.
and they're looking at their child and they're like, oh, I think my child might have ADHD. They don't want to, sit for 8 hours, and not that they are all getting 8 hours of work. I hope they're not, but some might be. But my kid doesn't want to sit for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours and do homework. Do you have any tips, I guess? And right now they can't see a specialist because most of us can't get out and see doctors. Do you have any thoughts on, tips on what they could do kind of moving forward while they're at home with children they think might have something going on?
Well, so first I would reach out to the school counselor. There should still, even if the schools are closed, there should still be access to a school counselor and different, what they consider to be like disability help. And they can test through the school to see if your child has ADHD. And that is something, even knowing that we've got the lockdown and you're not supposed to go out, usually they can work that out anyways. So, and if they do it at your school, or if they do it through your county or state or however they do it, it's usually free, and free is good. Nobody says no to free. So I definitely would say that's a great place to start. If your school doesn't offer it for some reason, definitely try to make an appointment with a psychiatrist or a psychologist. They're going to be able to do the testing and help you with that. And they, for the most part, should still be open. A lot of them too are doing telehealth. I mean, you and I, if I sat here and talked to you and wasn't trying to be like, I'm going to be professional, you would be like, wow, she's ADHD, isn't she? So, telehealth actually works. And a lot of psychologists are doing that right now because people don't want to leave, but they have so much anxiety because you can't leave. So, there's still a really good opportunity there.
No, that's a great point. I mean, there's no telling. There's so many things that could be going on right now with us and our children, concern, worry, anxiety, So I did want to ask you specifically, we hear a lot about hyperfocus with some children. Can you explain what that means?
I can. So some people call it our superpower. Some people get all mad about that. I don't care either way. There is a place where something grabs the attention, whatever it is, it grabs it and it gets like radar focused, and there is nothing else in existence. And that can be amazing when you're a college student and you haven't read the book and tomorrow's the final. Hyperfocus can be magic. But you have to be careful because you don't want to rely on it because it is usually deadline based or interest based. You can't fake hyperfocus. You can't trick your mind into it because we've all tried. But what you can do is help your kids recognize when they're doing it. And also recognize there are some downsides. It will grab your attention when you have something that you're hyper-focused on. It can literally tune out everything in the world. You can have somebody in the room speaking to you and you will literally not hear it. No exaggeration. It will get to the point with some people and some tasks where they stop hearing their body. They don't get a drink of water, they don't eat, sleep, go to the bathroom, none of that. Where you see it in little kids sometimes is, this game is so fun. Like, I'm 6 years old, right? And we are playing Legos and I have the best idea for Legos ever. And this is going to be the coolest thing. And then I can take my Matchbox cars and oh my God, it's so, right? So this is my kid brain happening at 6 years old. And then I wet myself. And mom's going, seriously? Seriously. I'm locked in the house with you and you just wet yourself and you're 6. Right? So the thing to do, take a breath, right? It's okay if they sit there for another minute, it'll be okay. Take a breath. Don't be upset. What has happened is their brain has gotten so focused on those Legos that they've literally not noticed that they had to go to the bathroom. And they're going to be embarrassed as all get out if somebody knows, right? If this happens at school or if it happens with the neighbor's kids, it's terrible. So don't make a big deal out of it. Scoop them up just like you would have when they were 3 years younger. Scoop them up, take them to the bathroom, clean it up. Let it go until everybody's feeling calm about it, right? And then when everybody can breathe and nobody's embarrassed and nobody's hyper-focused on the Legos, you can talk about it. And you can say, hey, you know, I noticed today you did that. You know, what's that about? And they're gonna, I don't know, right? Because they're gonna go like this because they're 6 and they shouldn't have done that. And you say, so sometimes it gets really exciting when you're playing Legos, huh? Yeah. And sometimes you don't know because you're thinking about your Legos, so you don't hear your body say, hey, it's time to go to the bathroom. And that's what happens sometimes. So how do we work together and make sure it doesn't happen again? Because you don't want to do that here at school. And say, hey, what do you think we can do? Right? And 6-year-olds don't have a lot of coping techniques yet. It's okay. But some of the coping techniques can be a code word, right? If you say, how about this? If mommy says, what sound does the dinosaur make? You go, roar, and you know that means I probably have to go to the bathroom, right? And I didn't have to say, go to the bathroom, honey. But, you know, at 6 years old, you've seen the look. That kid needs to go to the bathroom look, right? We all know that little look and the dance and the wiggle. So do the dinosaur code. Or if you're going to play Legos, how about next time when you're going to go play Legos, go to the bathroom first, and that way you won't even have to stop. You can just keep playing and playing, which is just as good as like this, right? So really trying to help them find a way to hear their body over that hyper focus so that that hyper focus can be a positive, not a negative.
Absolutely. I think that's great information for everyone to kind of boundaries and put in place some sort of order. Okay, so my last question for you would be, is there anything else that I missed that I didn't ask you that you think, you know, we should know about?
It's not like you missed it, but I think it's something so easily overlooked. ADHD kids are so amazing. There are so many people that are stars in their field. Michael Phelps, I can name a ton of them, and they're ADHD because they can bring that hyper focus, because they have so much energy, because their brains just don't think the same, right? Like I can remember the first time I heard the phrase thinking out of the box. We need to think out of the box at work. I'm thinking, oh crap, there was a box somewhere? Does anybody know where the box is? Because I didn't know there was a box, right? And so that creative flair and connecting things that other people can't connect, that hyper focus can turn into being the ER trauma surgeon that we all see on TV and think, oh my gosh, because they can do that. So yes, it's scary. Nobody wants to hear their child has a disorder, but as disorders go, it's amazing. And there are some qualities that your children will have. Most kids with ADHD are super empathetic. They're the ones that go over to the other little kid that they totally don't know on the playground, and the kid's crying and they pat them on the back and say, it's okay, you want my dolly? Those are the ADHD kids. So recognize that your kid has amazing, amazing abilities and innate talents that came with that disorder, and just know that they may not have been the same without it.
And that's a great point. It's for us to always appreciate our children and understand where they're at and meet them where they are at. And I appreciate you joining us today, Diane. I'm going to, I know your insight and your information is vital, and I know your time is limited, so we appreciate it. And on the website, I'm going to put information on how people can contact you, so they could maybe chat with you about setting up an appointment or moving forward. So.
And I have a couple other links that I'll send you for kind of national organizations that are huge supports. So I will send those to you, and hopefully we can get those out as well.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for being with us today. And So I plan to put all these videos on my Facebook page, my YouTube channel, and my website. I'm also going to put the Q&A to our conversation on my allmomsneedhelp.com website. So if anyone wants to, they're watching the video and didn't have time to write down all the answers, I'm going to put all that on the website. So, but thank you for joining us. And until next time, everyone, please stay healthy, please stay safe, and please stay well. Take care of yourself. Thank you.